Verified incident logs. Authentic footage. Pure accountability. Welcome to Bodycam Incident Reports.
Get up, you don't belong sitting here like
I
this.
know you, but this is a public place.
You look like you're casing this area. Show me ID.
Am I being detained? I haven't done anything wrong.
Don't get smart with me. Stand up or I'll make you.
Please don't touch me. My dad is on his way.
Yeah? Tell him to come get you from the station.
The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the hum of the atmospheric regulators in the ceiling. "I am asking you to look at the biometric scanner," the woman said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. "If you just look at the screen, my name is right there." "I don't need to look at the screen to know you don't belong here." It was 2:14 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday in Cambridge, Massachusetts, inside the sterile glass-walled lobby of Ethirus Biosciences. A newly hired night watch security officer named Tyler Vance had just made a calculation. He looked at the woman standing before him, a 52-year-old black woman wearing a soaked gray hoodie, sweatpants, and running sneakers, and he calculated that she was a threat. He calculated that she was an intruder. What Tyler Vance failed to calculate was the cost of his assumption. He didn't know that the woman, Dr. Elena Ross, was not only authorized to be there, but she was also the senior vice president of virology. He didn't know that she was the lead architect of the building's containment protocols. He didn't know that the item she was desperately trying to reach wasn't a stolen laptop, but a localized temperature override for a freezer containing 5 years of enzyme research that had triggered a remote alarm on her phone. And he certainly didn't know that by physically blocking her path for the next 9 minutes, he wasn't just ending his career. He was about to destroy $4.5 million worth of sensitive biological samples that would degrade while he lectured her on proper protocol. In 20 minutes, the police would arrive, but not for her. In 3 months, Ethirus Biosciences would face a public relations nightmare that would shake the biotech industry to its core. And in 1 year, the security standards for private research facilities across New England would be dismantled and rebuilt, all because of what happened in those critical, agonizing 9 minutes. But right now, in the cold, fluorescent light of the lobby, Tyler felt powerful. He felt righteous. He was about to learn that power without perception is just liability waiting to happen. Before we dive into the details of this night, I have a request. Take a moment to pause. If you are watching this, drop a comment below telling me where you are in the world right now, and please subscribe to the channel. We tell these stories not just to entertain, but to witness. You are going to want to hear how this ends. Dr. Elena Ross was a figure of legendary status within the niche world of molecular virology, though you wouldn't know it if you saw her in the grocery store. In an industry dominated by loud voices and aggressive egos, Elena was quiet. She was a stillness in the storm. Her resume was a fortress of competence. She held a PhD from MIT and a second doctorate in immunology from Johns Hopkins. Before joining Ethirus, she had spent a decade at the CDC working on the front lines of viral outbreaks in regions where resources were scarce and danger was high. She had stared down Ebola in West Africa. She had managed containment zones that would make most people hyperventilate. At Ethirus Biosciences, a multi-billion-dollar firm located in the heart of the Cambridge biotech hub, Elena was the brain trust. She oversaw the Project Chimera wing, a level 5 containment sector dedicated to developing synthetic enzymes that could theoretically neutralize airborne pathogens. It was delicate, high-stakes work. The samples she worked with were temperature-sensitive to the decimal point. Elena was known for her dedication. She didn't work 9 to 5. She worked when the science needed her. She was often seen entering the building at odd hours, checking cultures, reviewing data, ensuring the stability of her life's work. The regular day staff knew her well. The receptionists knew her coffee order, black 2 sugars. The veteran security guards knew that if Dr. Ross was coming in at 2 a.m., it meant a breakthrough was happening or a crisis was being averted. But the security team had recently been overhauled. Ethirus had switched contractors to a firm called Sentinel Shield to cut costs. The new guards were younger, less experienced, and trained on a rigid militaristic model of perimeter defense rather than corporate integration. Tyler Vance was the product of this new system. 24 years old, eager to prove himself, and steeped in a worldview that equated authority with volume. He had been on the job for exactly 12 days. He had never met Dr. Ross. He had never been shown a photo of the executive board. His training had emphasized threat detection and perimeter integrity. On this particular night, a storm had knocked out a transformer grid in East Cambridge. The Etherness facility had switched to backup generators seamlessly, but a glitch in the HVAC software had caused a temperature spike in freezer Unit 4, Elena's primary storage unit. Elena's phone had alerted her at 1:55 a.m. She saw the temperature climbing. She didn't have time to dress up. She didn't have time to put on a professional face. She threw on the clothes nearest to her bed, jumped in her car, and drove through the rain. She knew she had a window of about 15 minutes to manually reset the cooling loop before the enzymes denatured and became useless sludge. She arrived at the employee entrance at 2:13 a.m. She swiped her key card. The outer door opened. She stepped into the vestibule dripping wet, breathing hard, her eyes focused on the hallway that led to the secure elevators. That was when Tyler stepped out of the booth. He saw a woman in a hoodie. He saw urgency, which he interpreted as guilt. He saw someone who didn't fit his mental image of a scientist. "Hold it right there," he barked. Elena didn't stop immediately. Her momentum carried her forward. "I need to get to the 3rd floor," she said, not slowing down until he stepped physically in front of her. "There is a temperature excursion in the lab." "You need to stop." Tyler set his hand resting on his belt near his taser. "You aren't going anywhere." Elena paused. She took a breath. She understood protocol. She knew he was doing a job. She tried to be rational. "I am Dr. Elena Ross. I am the senior VP. My badge is in my hand. Scan it." She held up the badge. It was a gold-tier executive card. Tyler didn't look at the badge. He looked at her sneakers. He looked at the water dripping from her hood. "I don't care what you're holding. We've had reports of attempted break-ins in the area. You can't just waltz in here in the middle of the night dressed like that." "Dressed like what?" Elena asked. Her voice dropped an octave. "Like you're not supposed to be here," Tyler said. Elena pointed to the biometric scanner on the wall. "Tyler," she said, reading his name tag. "Listen to me very carefully. Inside that building, millions of dollars of research are currently degrading. If I do not get to the manual override in the next 10 minutes, it will be destroyed. I am going to place my hand on this scanner. It will verify my identity. Then I am going to the elevator. You touch that scanner and I'm detaining you for trespassing," Tyler said. He moved closer, invading her personal space. "You need to leave. Now. Come back during business hours with an appointment." "I don't need an appointment," Elena said, her patience fracturing under the weight of the ticking clock in her mind. "I run this division." "Yeah, and I'm the president," Tyler scoffed. "Last warning. Here is where the story shifts. In many of these encounters, the tragedy is the insult to dignity. But in this case, the tragedy was tangible. It was measured in degrees Celsius. Elena tried to step around him. She moved toward the turnstile. Tyler grabbed her arm. It wasn't a gentle guide. It was a forceful grip. He spun her around and pushed her back toward the glass doors. "I said leave." Elena stumbled. She caught herself against the wall. The shock hit her. A physical assault. In her own building. By a man young enough to be her son. "You just made a grave mistake," Elena whispered. She didn't scream. She didn't fight back physically. She looked at her watch. 2:18 a.m. The temperature in the freezer was now critical. "Call the police," Elena said. "Do it. Call them right now." "Way ahead of you," Tyler said. He keyed his radio. "Dispatch, I have a hostile intruder at the north gate. Refusing to leave. Physical altercation. Requesting PD backup. Hostile intruder. Physical altercation." Elena leaned against the wall. She closed her eyes. She knew in that moment the samples were gone. She could feel the loss like a physical weight. Years of coding, of testing, of late nights evaporating because a man couldn't reconcile her face with her authority. She stopped fighting to get in. There was no point. The window had closed. Instead, she took out her phone. She didn't call the police. She didn't call her husband. She opened the voice memo app. She began to narrate. "Time is 2:20 a.m. I, Dr. Elena Ross, have been physically restrained from entering the facility by Officer Tyler Vance. I have identified myself 3 times. I have offered my badge. I have requested biometric verification. He has refused. The critical temperature threshold for Project Chimera has likely been exceeded. The assets are lost. I am now waiting for the police." Tyler watched her speak into the phone, looking confused. "Who are you talking to?" Elena didn't answer him. She just waited. The Cambridge police arrived 8 minutes later. 2 officers, Officer Miller and Officer Davis. They walked in hands on their vests, ready for a disturbance. They saw Tyler standing aggressively near the turnstiles. They saw a woman in a hoodie leaning against the wall, looking exhausted and sad. "What's the problem here?" Officer Miller asked. "She refused to leave," Tyler said, puffing up his chest. "She tried to force her way past the checkpoint. No ID visible, claimed she worked here." Officer Miller turned to Elena. "Ma'am, do you have identification?" Elena slowly reached into her pocket. She pulled out her driver's license and her Ethris corporate badge. She handed them to the officer. Miller looked at the badge. He looked at the license. He looked at the massive portrait of Elena Ross hanging on the wall in the main atrium, visible through the glass inner doors, a portrait celebrating her recent award for scientific excellence. Miller looked back at Tyler. "Son," Officer Miller said, his voice changing tone completely. "Did you look at her badge?" "She wouldn't show it," Tyler lied. "She was aggressive." "I offered it to him 3 times, Elena said softly. "He told me I didn't look like I belonged here." Officer Miller looked at the badge again. "Senior Vice President," he read aloud. He looked at Tyler. "You stopped the VP." Tyler's face went from flushed to pale in a matter of seconds. The realization didn't hit him all at once. It seeped in. She was wearing a hoodie," he stammered. "It's 2 a.m. The protocol says you verify ID," Elena said. "The protocol does not say you judge employment status based on attire." Just then, the elevator doors pinged. A man in a suit ran into the lobby. It was Marcus Thorne, the internal director of security for Ethris. He had been alerted by the automated system that the police had been called. He saw Elena. He saw the police. He saw Tyler. "Dr. Ross," Marcus said, breathless. "My God, are you okay? I got the alert about the freezer alarm. Did you get to the override?" The room went silent. Elena looked at Marcus. She looked at Tyler. "No, Marcus," she said. "I didn't. Officer Vance here decided that my credentials were invalid. He physically prevented me from entering. The samples are destroyed." Marcus turned to Tyler. The look on his face was not anger. It was horror. He knew the value of that freezer. He knew the implications. "You stopped her," Marcus whispered. "You stopped Dr. Ross." I was just doing my job," Tyler said, his voice trembling. "She didn't look." "Stop talking," Marcus snapped. "Give me your badge. Give me your radio. Get out of my building." "But the police are here. I need to file a report," Tyler said, desperately trying to cling to the narrative where he was the hero. "You are trespassing," Marcus said, echoing Tyler's earlier words. "Leave, now." Tyler looked at the police officers. They offered him no support. He handed over his badge. He walked out into the rain, the automatic doors sliding shut behind him with a finality that felt like a gavel drop. But this wasn't the end. The firing of a security guard is easy. It's a transaction. What happened next was a war. Helena didn't scream. She didn't cry. She walked past the police, past Marcus, and went up to the lab. She opened the freezer. A wave of warm air hit her face. The internal thermometer read 12 degrees Celsius. The enzymes, which needed to be kept at 4, were cloudy, ruined. 5 years. Elena closed the freezer door. She sat down on the stool in the silent lab. She sat there for an hour, just staring at the stainless steel. When she came down the next morning, she was a different person. She didn't go to her office. She went to legal. She filed a formal report not just against the security company, but against Ethris Biosciences for negligence in their contracting and training protocols. This is where the story differs from what you might expect. Usually the company rushes to settle. They throw money at the problem to make it go away. But Ethris hesitated. Their insurers looked at the claim $4.5 million in lost research plus damages for emotional distress and assault. They tried to fight it. They tried to argue that Elena should have called the director of security sooner. They tried to argue that Tyler was a rogue actor and the company wasn't liable. They underestimated Elena's documentation. During the discovery phase of the lawsuit, Elena's legal team requested the security logs for the past 6 months. They wanted to see every after-hours entry. The data was devastating. It revealed that Tyler and his colleagues had allowed 17 different individuals to enter the facility after hours without scanning badges. Delivery drivers with pizza, a courier with a package, the boyfriend of a receptionist. All of them were white. All of them were waved through with a smile or a casual check. But on 3 separate occasions, staff members of color, a janitor, a junior researcher from India, and now Dr. Elena Ross had been stopped, questioned, and delayed. The pattern wasn't just in Tyler's head. It was in the culture of the security team. It was systemic. But the real smoking gun was the audio recording Elena had made. In the deposition, the lawyers for the security company tried to paint Elena as hysterical or uncooperative. Then Elena's lawyer played the tape. The room listened to her calm, clinical voice narrating the events while Tyler shouted in the background. They heard her ask for verification. They heard him refuse. They heard the specific language he used. "You don't look like the type." The silence in the deposition room was deafening. Have you ever had to prove your own competence to someone who had no business questioning it? How did it feel? Let me know in the comments below. Ethirus Biosciences realized they were sitting on a nuclear bomb. If this went to trial, if the public heard that tape, if the shareholders found out that racism had directly destroyed $4.5 million in assets, the stock would tank. They came to the table. The settlement was finalized 10 months after that rainy Tuesday. The number was confidential, but industry insiders put it north of $6 million. But Elena made it clear the money was the penalty, not the solution. She demanded 3 things that were non-negotiable. First, Sentinel's shield. The security contractor was fired immediately. Ethirus was required to hire an in-house security team paid as full employees with benefits who would undergo mandatory integration training with the scientific staff. Security could no longer be an other. They had to be part of the mission. Second, Ethirus had to implement a visual bias technology audit. They had to upgrade their entry systems so that biometric verification was the only standard. No human discretion allowed for entry. If the machine said yes, you entered. If it said no, you didn't. Removing the human element of judgment from the doorway removed the opportunity for bias. Third, and most personally, Elena demanded that the company fund a new grant, the Ross Initiative for Underrepresented Scientists. It wasn't just a scholarship, it was a full-ride doctoral funding program for biochemists from marginalized backgrounds. Elena returned to work. She had to restart Project Chimera from scratch. It was painful. It was exhausting. But she did it. 2 years later, the new enzyme was finalized. It was more effective than the original. Tyler Vance never worked in security again. The last anyone heard, he had moved back to his hometown in Ohio, working in a warehouse where he had no authority over anyone. The lobby of Ethirus Biosciences looks different now. There is no security booth that acts as a gatekeeper. There is a sleek glass tunnel filled with sensors. You walk through. It scans your face, your gait, your badge. It glows green if you belong. It stays red if you don't. It doesn't care about your hoodie. It doesn't care about your skin color. It deals only in facts. But the shadow of that night remains. Dr. Ross still walks those halls. She is still the brilliant mind behind the science. But she carries a lesson with her, one she shares with the young scientists she mentors through her grant program. She tells them about the night she stood in the rain. She tells them about the anger. But mostly she tells them about the silence. Here is the lesson, and I want you to really hear this. We often think of discrimination as loud slurs or violent acts. But more often it is the quiet, arrogant assumption of incompetence. It is the security guard who thinks he knows better than the scientist. It is the manager who explains your own job to you. It is the constant draining tax of having to justify your presence in a room you helped build. Elena Ross taught us that you cannot control the assumptions people make about you. You cannot control the Tyler Vances of the world. But you can control the record. She didn't scream. She didn't get arrested. She documented. She let the system expose itself. She used the very bureaucracy that tried to exclude her to dismantle the exclusion. In a world that constantly tries to tell you who you are, the most radical thing you can do is know the truth. Write it down and wait for the receipt to print. Rights are like muscles. If you don't exercise them, they atrophy. But if you stand your ground, if you demand to be seen not as a stereotype, but as a citizen, you don't just clear the path for yourself. You clear it for the person coming 10 minutes behind you. Before you go, I have one question for you to ponder. If you were in Elena's shoes, watching your life's work melt away behind a glass door, would you have kept your cool, or would you have broken the glass? Be honest in the comments. Thank you for spending this time with us. If this story resonated with you, if it made you feel the weight of that silence, please share it. Hit the like button to help us tell more stories like this. And remember, never let anyone with a badge and a bias determine your worth.
The incident review concludes here. To support continued transparency, kindly like and subscribe. We appreciate you watching Bodycam Incident Reports.